News!
Okay, we'll start with this. Yet another look at what is Claressa Shields' upcoming fight with Canada's own Vanessa Joanisse, reigning WBC heavyweight champion, and why I was confused initially when I first broached the subject of this fight, because I thought it was going to be a light heavyweight contest.
I did.
Based on what I read, there were going to be light heavyweight titles on the line, and there still are.
I want to preface everything I'm about to say with this. I'm all right with the fight, and I'm all right with the opponent.
What I'm not necessarily all right with is the number of alphabet titles the alphabet organizations have so attached to this event, because it is misleading. So Claressa Shields is going to be challenging Vanessa for what is Vanessa's WBC heavyweight title, but that's not all.
Vanessa won the vacant WBC heavyweight world title in her last fight earlier this year opposite the ring April Vidal.
So Vanessa is the WBC heavyweight champion. What she's not is the WBO light heavyweight champion or the WBA interim light heavyweight champion.
I don't understand.
Those two titles are from a different division. They're literally from the light heavyweight division, where this is being billed as a heavyweight contest.
What's the problem?
That when a contest is over, what they're going to tell you is Claressa Shields is both a heavyweight and light heavyweight champion.
Having done absolutely nothing at light heavyweight.
Because there's nobody at light heavyweight for Claressa Shields to fight. If you think 160 and 168 are barren divisions, 175 is even worse.
There's nobody there.
So what they're doing here is what they did for Claressa when she first dropped down to 160 and when she first dropped down to 154. Most people don't realize that her initial undisputed run at 160, 3 of the 4 titles she picked up were vacant. Nobody was holding them. It was the same at 154.
3 of the 4 titles she picked up on that undisputed run were vacant.
So when she first dropped down to 160, there was only one reigning champion at 160, just one, and that was Christina Hammer.
That's the long and the short of it. The only title that she won from Christina that night was the WBO title. The other 3 titles, they were vacant.
Now, it was more or less the same thing at 154. She moves down, and 3 of the 4 titles she picked up there was vacant. The only title she won from Marie-Eve Dicaire was Marie's IBF title.
Wait a minute, wasn't Hannah Gabriel's reigning WBA champion at the time?
She was, up until the WBA demoted her. They demoted her to regular champion and upgraded Claressa's fight with Marie-Eve Dicaire for a full WBA title. Marie herself was not full WBA champion. Marie didn't have a WBA title of any kind. Essentially what the WBA did was manufacture a WBA title and demote Hannah Gabriel's in the process.
What?
In layman's terms, they gift wrapped a bunch of titles to give to Claressa. That's what they did. That's what they did at 160. That's what they did at 154. And that's what they're doing right now with this.
Except that with this, they're going a step further.
Now they're gift wrapping her titles from different divisions. The light heavyweight division.
Well, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with picking up a vacant title?
Well, there's something to be said about a heavyweight contest where there are light heavyweight titles on the line, but it's not so much that the titles are vacant, it's not so much that they're basically gift wrapping these titles for Claressa Shields. It's that after this, what they're gonna tell you is Claressa is both a heavyweight and light heavyweight champion, having done absolutely nothing at light heavyweight, so that it looks good on paper, and so that she can say she's the greatest woman of all times for fighting in these divisions where nobody fights. This is why I regularly challenge Claressa Shields' greatest woman of all times claim.
You're supposed to be the greatest woman of all times for campaigning in these divisions.
The point emerges. Picking up all these different vacant titles across all these different divisions is not the same as Katie moving up in weight and challenging Chantel Cameron for all of her belts, or Amanda Serrano taking on Erica Cruz and going balls to the wall to win the WBA title from her, dominating Sarah Mahfoud for Sarah's IBF. It's not the same thing.
It's not the same thing as Sinicia winning the WBA title from Annabelle Ortiz, then the WBC from Tina Ruprecht, and the other 2 from Yo Costavalle.
When Dimitri Salita starts talking up his fighter and making his sales pitch, he'll start talking about all these different belts that Claressa won across all these different divisions with no context.
That most of those belts were vacant, and in those divisions, there's practically nobody to fight. That's why nobody's holding the WBO light heavyweight title, or that version of the WBA.
And this is supposed to make you the greatest woman of all times.
There's nothing wrong with the fight with Vanessa.
But don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining. Don't gift wrap all these titles to gift to Clarissa and then tell me she's the greatest that ever did it.
Because she won them.
It's just plain old chicanery. You want me to look at this as being the same thing as Amanda moving from 126 up to 140 to challenge Katie for all the belts she holds? Well, I'm sorry, but it's not the same thing.
It's not the same level of a fight. It's not the same level of opponent.
Yeah, Clarissa's plenty skilled, but she's campaigning in barren divisions, and it is what it is.
There's no nice way for me to say that.
In men's junior middleweight news, former WBO champion Patrick Teixeira is not expecting much behind Xander Zayas' punches.
He thinks he can't punch?
At 33, Teixeira is 12 years older than Zayas, who turned professional at just 16. This will be Zayas' third bout scheduled for 10 rounds, and despite his previous 2 fights not going the distance, Teixeira has reservations about the potency of the prodigy's mitts. Xander has an intelligent style. He can box. He is fast. But he doesn't have a lot of power, said Teixeira, the former WBO junior middleweight champion. Via a translator, after seeing his fights, he doesn't have a lot of power. Some of the fighters he fought haven't been at a high level, and others have been easy to knock out.
Regardless, Zayas enters with a 60% knockout ratio and is on a 2-fight knockout streak.
Teixeira has a slightly higher knockout percentage at 73, but has only been stopped once by Curtis Stevens way back there in 2016. Teixeira defeated Carlos Adames in 2019 to become WBO world champion. He later lost his belt to Argentinian slugger Brian Castaño, so he has faced his fair share of formidable punchers. I don't think so, said Teixeira. When discussing whether he thinks Zayas is overlooking him, I think he respects me. I think he's focused on this fight, and he knows it's difficult.
So this is an acid test for Xander Zayas. I've been watching him the last 3 years, coming up the ranks, and he's worked himself up to the point where now he's got a former champion in front of him. A rite of passage for many a boxer.
That if you aspire to one day see yourself crowned a world champion, you need to be able to take care of a former champion, a guy like Patrick Teixeira, and I think that Xander Zayas can. Patrick is best described as an aggressive customer, a mid-range to inside volume puncher, a pressure guy. You know the type.
Hot-nosed, tough as old boots.
Comes forward throwing punches and bunches, not a whole lot of bells and whistles, not a lot of subtleties and nuances. You know the type.
And he's tough. He's only ever been knocked out once.
Now, he says he doesn't really think Xander can punch. He doesn't think Xander's a big puncher. He'll find out firsthand this Saturday whether or not Xander can or can't punch. Thanks in part to Teixeira, Brazilian boxing is in a good place. Robson Conceição won a gold medal in the 2016 Olympics and has fought for a world title 3 times as a pro. He will make his 4th attempt on July 6th against Oshaki Foster. The WBC junior lightweight champion Beatriz Ferreira recently won the women's IBF lightweight title and was the 2020 Olympic silver medalist. And Herbert Conceição won a gold medal in the 2020 Olympics. Despite these successes, Teixeira believes there is still work to be done. I think we are going through a good moment in boxing, Teixeira said, but we need more. Boxing is small here. We need more events. We need more appearances on television to be seen.
I think in terms of combat sports, mixed martial arts is a lot more popular in Brazil than boxing.
But they have produced some boxers. Danilo Ramos, Beatriz Ferreira, Yamaguchi Falcao, Esquiva Falcao,
Patrick Teixeira.
A victory over one of the top prospects in the sport could help give more exposure to boxing in Brazil, Teixeira agreed. Yes, I think it would help. Each victory from a Brazilian in the United States is important for us, Teixeira said. It is important for boxing in Brazil. It helps create confidence, and it shows the hard work that we can do takes us wherever we want.
Might take Patrick to the hospital this weekend.
So Patrick's a pressure guy, and Xander is best described as a boxer puncher. He can box when he needs to, punch when he needs to. Good dimensions for this weight. He's an orthodox fighter. He jabs with his left to set up his right. It's the other way around with Patrick. Patrick is a southpaw.
Tail of the tape, they're about even.
They're about even in terms of wingspan. about even in terms of reach as well, scheduled for 10 rounds in the junior middleweight division.
It's a very hot division right now.
Unified champion Sebastian Fundora, IBF champion Bakhram Murtazaliev, WBA champion Israel Madrimov. We know that now Terence Crawford is campaigning here. There's Tim Tszyu, there's Virgil Ortiz, there's Sergey Bohachuk,
Charles Conwell.
It's a division that has a lot to offer, a lot going on, and that's where this weekend's contest is taking place. Xander Zayas, 21 years old, sports a professional record of 18 wins, no losses, no draws,
12 knockouts.
The bit about Patrick Teixeira questioning Xander Zayas' punching power. Remember, even though Xander's been boxing since age 16, he's only 21 right now. He doesn't yet have his grown man strength, and I don't think he's fully filled out as a fighter. Given his physical dimensions, I'd say he has a bright future at junior middle, and he might cap out at super middle at 168 many years from now.
But now,
he's at 154, and here today, I don't think he's as strong as he's going to be later on. I don't think we've seen the best from Xander Zayas. Not yet.
But we'll get a glimpse this weekend when he faces Patrick Teixeira, who sports a professional record of 34 wins with 4 losses, no draws, 25 knockouts, having only ever been knocked out once in 38 professional contests.
A hard-nosed veteran who's currently on a 3-fight winning streak, having dropped a decision to Magomed Kurbanov way back there in July of 2022. He has since rebounded off that loss with 3 knockout wins. Last in action earlier this year in March, opposite the ring, Edison Saltarin, who he stopped in 4 rounds. Comes to Xandor. Xandor last saw action in December of last year opposite the ring, Jorge Fortea. He saw action 3 times last year. This will be his first fight of this one.
And he's got to win it. You can tell. This is a sink-or-swim fight. Not dissimilar from what they did to Carlos Adames years ago when they put him in the ring with Patrick Teixeira.
Carlos Adames didn't pass that acid test, but I expect this weekend that young Xander Zayas is going to. A promising youngster of Puerto Rican descent that could revive the Puerto Rican boxing scene in all the ways that Edgar Berlanga did not.
Puerto Rico! Oh!
Of all the Puerto Ricans out there in circulation, Amanda Serrano, Subriel Matias, I feel like Xander Zayas is of that ilk. I feel he has the ability to be molded into an elite fighter. I think we're going to see that this weekend.
I think he's going to stop Patrick.
Well, I know that Patrick has only ever been stopped once, and that was many, many years ago.
But I trust the process.
And Xander's development. I think he's going to stop Patrick on Saturday. Elsewhere in the junior middleweight division, it was announced earlier today that terms have been agreed for a Virgil Ortiz versus Sergey Bohachuk fight.
No, it was supposed to be Tim Tszyu, but he withdrew.
Under the advice of his doctors due to that cut on the top of his head that he suffered in a Fundora fight. So now Virgil may be facing Sergey Bohachuk, WBC interim champion. Both sides have agreed to a bout. Bohachuk's promoter Tom Loeffler confirmed. The question is whether or not it will be on the undercard of Crawford versus Madrimov on August 3rd. Ortiz was originally slated to face Tim Tszyu on August 3rd in LA until Tszyu had to withdraw this week because the wound he suffered on his head in March with Sebastian Fundora had not healed in time. Speculation then grew about a potential fight with Bohachuk coming in as a replacement. Ortiz, 26 years old, has won all of his fights by way of knockout. This year, he's only fought 2 rounds, scoring a TKO over Frederick Lawson, then another one over Thomas Dulorme, both in the first round. Bohachuk, 29 years old, is coming off the biggest win of his career, defeating Brian Mendoza to become the WBC's interim junior middleweight champion. Bohachuk's March 30th unanimous decision win over Mendoza was the first time he had gone the distance as a professional boxer. So we had agreed in principle, said Tom Loeffler, who also used to promote Gennady Golovkin.
You remember.
We agreed to fight Virgil. I know that Virgil's side, they agreed between Rick Merrigan, Ortiz's manager, and Golden Boy. They had agreed. The fight, however, is not yet listed on the August 3rd poster for the Riyadh season event at the BMO Stadium. Loeffler indicated that might be due to those behind the scenes involved with Riyadh season, a Saudi-backed, state-funded sports and entertainment endeavor. I think it hit a speed bump with the people actually running the show and the Saudis, said Loeffler, so I'm not sure the status of that. But both sides definitely agreed. If it doesn't happen on that show, I think it's such a great fight that we're going to look for a different show to put it on. Loeffler sees potential for an excellent Southern California rivalry between the two top fighters, which could create an interesting cultural dynamic for the bout. When Tim Tszyu was determined that he wasn't able to fight on that show, and Golden Boy was looking for a different opponent, Sergey was the natural choice, said Loeffler, trained by Manny Robles here in Los Angeles. Manny Robles, one of my favorite trainers.
Yeah, he's good.
In LA, and Ortiz, trained by Robert Garcia in LA. That to me is probably even better than the Tim Tszyu fight as far as an LA-based fight.
So let's get down to brass tacks, gentlemen. Is this a better fight? And is Sergey a better fighter than Tim Tszyu would have been had he not pulled out?
Being honest with you, this fight has the same appeal as the Tim Tszyu fight because Sergey Bohachuk, like Tim Tszyu, he is a volume puncher. He is a pressure fighter, an action fighter. So this fight has the same appeal that fight would have had.
But I don't think that Sergey is as proven as Tim Tszyu is. I think Tim Tszyu's quality of competition so far is more impressive and more telling than Sergey Bohachuk's.
Tim has fought two former champions in Jeff Horn and Tony Harrison, a former U.S. Olympian in Terrell Gausha, two hard-nosed contenders in Takeshi Inoue and Brian Mendoza. Brian Mendoza is a common opponent between them.
Between Tim and Sergey.
And even though Tim Tszyu lost that Sebastian Fundora fight, the fact that Sebastian couldn't get him out of there, he couldn't knock him out even though his vision was hindered, he couldn't see.
The blood was getting into his eyes.
His eyes, both of them. There was blood everywhere. The fact he was able to power through that and finish the fight on his feet, I do think Tim is not only a better fighter than Sergey Bohachuk, but I think he's a stronger puncher.
I think he's more durable, too.
Sergey Bohachuk is an exciting fighter, and he's definitely a threat, but he has been knocked out before. In March of 2021, he was stopped by Brandon Adams. Brandon Adams isn't known for power. He's not known as a knockout merchant, but he did knock out Sergey Bohachuk. For what it's worth, I think Sergey has improved since then. I think he's a better fighter now than he was back then when he fought Brandon.
But I didn't forget that in his last fight, Brian Mendoza stunned him. Brian Mendoza hurt him. He can be caught in between. So if Virgil lands...
You know, Virgil's a big kid, and he's a strong kid. He's a strong puncher.
Questions that need answers.
Is this going to be part of the Crawford versus Madrimov card, or will they do it later on in the year? Can Virgil Ortiz actually make 154? Because he hasn't made it yet. He didn't make it in the Lawson fight. He didn't make it in the Dulorme fight. Will he make it for this one? Because Sergey Bohachuk is WBC interim champion. If Virgil beats him, that lines him up to fight for the WBC title.
That lines him up to fight the winner of Fundora versus Spence.
I thought Crawford was in line to fight the winner of Fundora versus Spence.
Not really. Turkey Al Sheikh wants to put him in the ring with Canelo if he beats Madrimov.
So we'll see.